Former Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton has unfortunately reemerged from the woods in order to blame progressives for the impending red wave that is forecast in the midterm elections. Right now, President Biden's approval ratings are a complete and utter disaster. He is underwater. And the midterms, the forecast for that midterm election is incredibly bleak for the Democrats. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a blowout. Look, you got high inflation, you got gas prices that are incredibly high. The fact that you can't really point to any policy positions that Congress has actually passed that's going to help the material conditions for the average person. There were some policy positions that were put up, some bills that were put up. They're dead. Build Back Better is dead. The child tax credit, it's dead. Stimulus, dead. Unemployment, dead. Voting rights, very, very important. Voting rights, dead. COVID, over 1 million dead. And by the way, COVID's still here. Rent, very high. Home ownership, unattainable. Prescription drug prices, still very, very high. All of that, all of those are bread and butter issues that they have done nothing about. But Hillary Clinton knows who to blame. Progressives. For going, too far left. In an interview published last week with Financial Times editor Edward Luce, Luce writes this, and I hate the framing here, right? I cannot allow the lunch to end without questioning the direction of her party. I say that Democrats seem to be going out of their way to lose elections by elevating activist causes, notably the transgender debate. By the way, it's not a debate. Transgender people, trans rights are human rights. Simple as that. But says that these are only relevant to a small minority. What sense does it make to depict J.K. Rowling as a fascist? To my surprise, Clinton shares the premise of my question. Oh, big surprise. She's a TERF. Not surprising at all. Here's what she said in response to that. We are standing on the precipice of losing our democracy, and everything that everybody else cares about then goes out the window. Look, the most important thing is to win the next election. The alternative is so frightening that whatever happens, whatever does not help you win, should not be a priority. So basically, trans people, not a priority, even though she had claimed before that, hey, trans people, top priority. So again, this guy's saying, trans people, you're not important. I mean, such a small group of people, who cares? Yes, sure, they're getting massively targeted by the far right. They're getting their rights stripped away. But hey, it turns out, advocating for them, not popular. It's extreme. Extreme. I mean, look at the fascism that's coming. I got news for you. For transgender Americans, fascism is already here. They're not coming for trans people. They've already come for trans people. They're attacking them every single day. Nearly 300 anti-LGBTQI plus bills have been filed so far this year. 140 of them targeting specifically trans children. But here's the establishment thinking, no. Defending trans people, that's not popular. No, if we do that, if we defend trans people and human rights, that's going to turn off our conservative voters. But we need to focus on fighting the fascism. It's already here. But this makes me think of the famous poem. And you probably heard it before. This is from Pastor Martin Niemöller. And excuse me if I butcher the name. But you may have heard this before. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Now you might be wondering, well, okay, look, this is obviously in reference to the Nazis, Nazi Germany, of course. How does that apply here? Well, remember that fascists operate by picking off the weakest among us, those who are unable to defend themselves. And by the way, they get away with it when the majority does not defend the people who are weakest. Today, that happens to be the transgender community. Then, after that, it's going to be gay people. They're already ramping up attacks on gay people. Then they're coming after women. Already, women's rights are in the chopping block when it comes to the Supreme Court. Then it's everyone else. Then they're going to come for me, and no one else will be here to speak for me, to speak up for me. If you do not defend the weakest among us, if you don't fight the fascists with everything you have, as soon as they rear their ugly little heads, then you let them win. As soon as you start abandoning people, leaving them by the roadside, throwing them under the bus because, oh, it's just not popular, then you're letting the fascists win. And that's the problem with the corporate Democrats, the establishment Democrats. Now, look, let me give some credit to, by the way. The Biden administration has come out and denounced all of these anti-trans bills. You don't hear a lot about it, unless Fox News rages about it, of course. And they put out a lot of statements defending the LGBTQIA plus community. They've signed an executive order to create a more diverse federal workforce. Been trying to push the Equal Rights Amendment. They reversed a Trump order that would allow landlords to deny trans people the ability to rent due to their identity. So the Biden administration has actually done some pretty good things to defend trans people. And we got to give them credit where credit is due. But now the problem is Hillary Clinton, James Carville, and the rest of these corporate Democrats, they're saying, oh, you see that? Extreme. Go woke, go broke. That's what it is. See how far the leftists have gone? It's their fault. It's the left's fault. They're losing because they're focusing on this woke bullshit. No. See, here's the thing. Not throwing trans people under the bus is not why Democrats are losing or going to lose. This doesn't have anything to do with being wokist or wokeism or defending trans people too much or going too left on social issues. No. It's because the Democrats have failed to do anything to improve anybody's material conditions. That's it. Remember all the stuff that Joe Biden had promised. Remember the $2,000 stimulus checks? Where did those go? Now the Federal Reserve, by the way, instead of giving money, helping people who are poor, who are struggling, they're blaming the inflation that is going on the very same stimulus checks. Also, remember how there's this gigantic push to get everybody back to work. Oh, you got to get back to work. Got to get back to work. We got to end unemployment benefits. We got to push people from remote work back into the office. We got to do all of that, right? Now the Federal Reserve is also saying, or more specifically, Larry Summers is saying, oh, actually, you know what? Instead of getting people back to work, we actually need unemployment. Not unemployment benefits. We just need more people that are without jobs. Here's a quote from him. He says, we need 5 years of unemployment above 5% to contain inflation. In other words, we need 2 years of 7.5% unemployment, or 5 years of 6% unemployment, or 1 year of 10% unemployment. That's what he said would cool inflation. Hey, we just need to have austerity. We need to have millions of people lose their jobs. That's what we need to have. That's what will stop inflation. Because there's just too much money in the country. We gave people too much money. We gave regular people too much money. And then you have the Fed, Jerome Powell. Here's what he said during a Senate Banking Committee hearing on Wednesday. So this was specifically being asked by Elizabeth Warren. She asked Powell if Fed rate increases to cool inflation will actually help average people, right? Like, for example, gas prices. She asked about gas prices. Is raising the federal interest rate, which is what they plan to do, Will that help gas prices? He responded with, I would not think so. Interesting. Warren then asked if grocery prices would go down if you were to do this. He also said, I wouldn't say so. No. She then said later, inflation is like an illness, and the medicine needs to be tailored to the specific problem. Otherwise, you could make things a lot worse. Right now, the Fed has no control over the main drivers of rising prices, but the Fed can slow demand by getting a lot of people fired and making families poorer. Understand that this is what the administration is looking at doing to combat inflation. They're possibly looking at putting the United States into a recession. Now, Joe Biden comes out and says, no recession. We're just going to have the Fed raise, interest rates. We got to do that. And then, we're going to give a gas tax holiday, which is a gimmick. But, we're not going to actually do anything else to raise rate. In fact, it would probably be better, according to business leaders, if wages go down. Because there's too much money in people's pockets. That's the problem. That's the real problem. No. And then, by the way, these same people who are blaming receiving stimulus checks, people receiving stimulus checks for the inflation, they ignore the trillions of dollars that went to the banks. They ignore the trillions of dollars that went to corporations, who then bought back their own stocks and raised their prices anyway. That's why they're posting record profits and why they have record executive pay. But here's Hillary Clinton saying, no, that's ignore all of that. No, the reason that we're not doing well is because we went too far left on social issues. And how we win, how we defeat fascism is to throw transgender people under the bus. This is the trolley problem, okay? She's going to flip the switch to have the trolley run over trans people. And then, guess what? They're going to lose anyway. Ridiculous. All right, there's more. She has more criticism, by the way. The conversation then went on with Clinton warning Democrats to break off the public campaign to, quote unquote, defund the police. Saying, you need accountable measures, but you also need policing. It doesn't even pass the common sense politics test. Not to believe that. You know who doesn't pass the test? Hillary Clinton. She has no idea what defund the police actually means. She doesn't. Accountable measures is what defund police is. Okay? That's part of it, at least. Look, defund the police, I agree with it. Okay? Now, I agree with the sentiment. The name is kind of problematic, of course. It leads to a lot of obvious misunderstanding, which we have seen. But it doesn't mean no police. It means using funding that would have been spent on militarization, buying military gear, and outfitting our the Freudian slip here, outfitting our cops to look like troops that are in an occupying country. You look at some of the pictures of police, they look almost no different from soldiers that we had patrolling Fallujah. And these are our own cities. They do not need the money for that. They don't need the money for this high-end equipment. No, in reality, defund the police means not militarizing them and taking that additional money that would have been spent on that and funding social workers, funding mental health care, funding addiction services, ending homelessness. All the additional money that you could have in the community to prevent these crimes from happening in the first place. It doesn't mean getting rid of police. You don't get rid of police. No, under a defund the police scenario, you would also retrain the police away from what they're doing now, which obviously isn't working. You look at what happened in Uvalde. Too cowardly, even with all their advanced equipment, to run in and save 19 children from a mass shooter. All the equipment in the world couldn't have made these cops go in. Their training, they were trained to be cowards. Trained to be cowards. All right. But anyway, she then says, some positions are so extreme on both the right and the left that they retreat to their corners. Politics should be the art of addition, not subtraction. First off, why should we listen to advice about winning from someone who lost to Donald frickin' Trump? Why? Why? Makes no sense, does it? Secondly, can you point to one extreme position on the left? One extremist position. When you have the right wing that is fascist. You have the right wing that is literally forcing regular people, taxpayers, to now force for religious indoctrination in schools, in private schools. Okay? I mean, that's extreme. Banning books all over schools because they don't like the content of it. Accusing teachers and gay people being groomers, grooming children, pedophiles. That's extreme. Is there anything on the left that's comparable to that? No, there isn't. Give one example. But to her, extreme is wanting to do anything that might potentially hurt the donors. Her donors. Members of industry. That's what it is. Now, secondly, of course, or thirdly, when it comes to extreme, defending trans rights is not extreme at all. Defending trans rights is the right thing to do. And Hillary Clinton claimed that she used to be on that side. Oh, under a Hillary Clinton administration, we will put transgender and LGBTQI plus rights on the forefront. That will be a number one priority, is to defend them. And now she shows her true colors and saying, transgender people, what name so? Don't care. Not a priority. Not a priority. Defending them is too extreme. Look, Hillary Clinton, as always, would rather punch left than admit that her radical centrism has absolutely failed. And rather than admit that the Biden administration has failed to honor so many of its campaign promises and has not addressed the material conditions of the average person, of the American people that they are supposed to serve. Hillary Clinton should have stayed in the woods instead of popping her head up to punch left as she always does.